Hi friends, day 14 of our journey with Jesus and coming to rediscover him. I pray that this video finds you well. Today it's all about purity of heart. To be chaste and pure is often a topic that makes us uncomfortable. Even in confession, sometimes I'm amazed at how many people fail to recognize this commandment in our own life. And the idea of not just at times watching things like pornography and other things, but do I have control of my eyes? Do I master what I look at? Do I look at others as my brother or sister? Or do my eyes at times show a lack of self-control? We know that sight is an incredible gift from God. Of the 5 senses, I don't know about you friends, it's the one I value the most. The gift of sight, the ability to see God's beauty, to be aware of one's surroundings, is something that I often thank God for each day. Something I know that I take for granted, and I'm reminded when I have someone that God puts in my life that has difficulty seeing. But sight isn't just about using our eyes, it's the custody of our eyes. And Matthew does a great job of really asking ourselves, do we have self-control? Because it's natural for men to look and see a beautiful woman as I do and say, Lord, you did a good job. But then if my eyes were to go and to start to imagine what she might look like in a Victoria's Secret lingerie catalog, item, that's a problem, or even worse than that. How many of you women recognize a good-looking guy and might think, oh, he's really hot, But then how many of you might undress him with your eyes? This is not of God, especially those of you who are married. Your eyes should only be focused on your spouse. Me as a single person, you as single people. We need to have custody of our eyes as well, so that our eyes do not lead us into these temptations where we can quickly spiral. Think of even watching pornographic or inappropriate pictures or movies. These are our brothers and sisters. How many of us would like to see our sister as a stripper on stage, or perhaps posing nude for Playboy magazine? How many of us would appreciate our brother posing as a stripper, or again, in one of those magazines? It's important that we realize that that woman, that man, that's somebody's son or daughter, that they're not using their body as a temple of the Holy Spirit. By us even looking at those images, whether or not they're part of the sexual trafficking or out of their own desire they wish to be there, are we not encouraging them as Christians by our participation in that? Now I know many times, friends, you might be walking down the street, or in my case I'm watching the game or whatever, and a commercial comes up and these provocative images are brought to us. But that's an opportunity to look away. It's an opportunity to say, Lord, help me to have custody of my eyes. In our sex-crazed society, it's thrown in our faces. Sometimes we're not even looking for it. But sometimes when we are vulnerable, as we think back to the first week of Lent, talks about temptation and how the devil uses things to tempt us in our times of weakness. And so it's so important for us to actually look at ourselves and be honest with ourselves and say, do I exhibit self-control? Are we editing what we are looking at? If we learn more to control our eyes and what we look at, how much deeper will the peace be with us? Even as we look at our spouse, for those of us who are married, please God, we don't see sex as something that we're entitled to, but rather this beautiful intimacy between husband and wife as they share the deepest love they can, and how they're longing for each other in a very pure and beautiful way is exactly what Jesus wanted when he gave us the gift of our sexuality. So this idea of being pure of heart, think of many of the beautiful saints who saw their virginity, their purity, as a great gift that they can show to God. For indeed, they saw others not as objects, but rather as temples of the Holy Spirit. And indeed, again, as I mentioned before, recognizing God's beauty in each of us, but also realizing that lust and sexual desires are things that we need to combat on a regular basis. And that each of us who struggle with those things, friends, must set up healthy boundaries to make sure that we don't fall into those traps. Call a friend, because they're struggling with the same thing. Ask them to put a parental code on your electronic devices and not to share that code. Do it for each other. What a great way of making sure that we don't fall into those traps. And then when we're out and about, not just in the summer months, when we're at the gym, when we're at a restaurant, and our eyes start to wander, let's make sure that we ask God to help us to regain custody of our eyes. Jesus, purify our hearts, purify our minds, purify our bodies, purify our souls. God bless you, friends, as we ask the Lord to help us to have control of our eyes.